afternoon. Here we go. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's see. Okay, we've got our comments. See if I can get this figured out. Last time I got to see some comments when some people posted right away. And I was like, oh, this is sweet because I can see these. So let's see, I'm going to just put it in here. Good afternoon. I can't spell afternoon. This is going to be a good start to our day, you guys. There we are. All right. And let's see if I'll be able to see anybody's comments this time. I know it's like a never ending trying to figure out technology. And if you are with me live today, go ahead and say hello. And then also, if you can let me know if our sound is good. We have a new mic because we were having issues with the old mic. And we're going to be jumping in because today I want to talk about the power of awareness. And this is probably one of my favorite topics. I mean, really, everything that I do falls underneath this. And so when we take a look at awareness and what this means as we jump in, is if you took okay, so here I'm going to start this way. So I had a question here I wanted to start with us. So if I told you the most important, how did I write that, you guys? What if I told you that most of your choices aren't actually made from the real you? I want you to just think about that for a moment. So if the real you is not the one that's making most of your choices, who is? And I remember the first time I heard this in a book, and it was one of those moments where you pause and you're like, uh-oh, well, what does this mean? And we're talking about the subconscious mind. So the version of us that keeps showing up is the one that is reacting, it's pleasing, it's overthinking. And so it's in a survival loop. And we're on this constant default loop that keeps going and going and going. And in this default loop, as we are getting stuck here, we don't realize that this means we're really living from the past. So it's our past that's running our present time. So even if I'm gaining more awareness and I'm learning and I want to embody that, if I don't deal with my subconscious beliefs, my subconscious loops and patterns, then I'm still going to be being run by my past. The 10-year-old little girl that was told she wasn't smart enough. The 12-year-old girl that was told she wasn't pretty enough. And those versions of myself are going to be making decisions and choices in my business. They're going to be making the choices and decisions in my parenting, as well as in my relationship. And so once we have awareness, though, awareness is where we get to start to create this pause. And instead of being on autopilot and reacting, we get to start responding. So I always think of responding is responsible. And if we think of it from that point of view, I always want to be in this state of being responsible for myself. And that's really what that means. It's not that you're responsible for other people. When we're responding, we're responsible for the words that come out of our mouths, the facial expressions that show on our face. We're responsible for everything that we do and how we're showing up in this world. And for myself, I know for a long time I was in a constant state of reaction. And it was definitely on a constant defense mode. And if I wasn't on defense mode, then I was usually on offense mode. And this is where a lot of the chaos in my life started to be created from. And so when we take a look at what is awareness, and if you think of this as our awareness is how we not only stop living on autopilot, it's really the first step into our sovereignty. And so what is awareness really is when we're no longer talking at a surface level where you know better, do better, but we're starting to talk about like sacred awareness. So where the kind that opens the door and exposes the lies that you've unconsciously been living. I want you to just let that sink in for a moment. It exposes the lies that you've unconsciously been living. And for myself, as I do a lot of spiritual work. I do a lot of spiritual reading. I do a lot of spiritual studies in a constant desire to understand me. Why do I make these choices? Why do I respond this way? What is it that I'm attracting into my life? How could I make better choices and decisions for myself that will have a greater impact on the world around me? And don't worry, there's times where I just sit and hang out and I read Nora Roberts books. But at the same time, I do a ton of work to try and heal my own wounds, because the truth is I've spent most of my life being a very hurt person. I spent my life being a very hurt little girl that became a very hurt and then angry teenager that became a very hurt girl in my 20s. And I would kind of vacillate between the pain and the fear and the pain and the anger. And this is where a lot of my life was being lived from for a long, long time. And it wasn't until my 40s, I think the first big book that really was pivotal. I mean, I've read a lot, but the first one that made like a huge impact where I can really remember it changing how I responded was the book by Brene Brown, Gifts of Imperfection, letting go of who you think you need to be to embrace who you truly are. And this book was like an aha moment for me where I was like, oh, what if I leaned into the discomfort instead of trying to protect myself from feeling discomfort? And so when we're talking about sacred awareness, we're talking about the willingness to open and really see ourselves, to feel all of those little hurts, the discomforts, and then lean into them. And so awareness is realizing that our anxiety is our nervous system trying to protect us. I was just talking to Matt today when I was having acupuncture, and we were discussing about anxiety, and I realized that my anxiety is a definite warning light that always goes off when I am either out of alignment with myself. So maybe I'm not speaking up about my true beliefs, my true thoughts, really showing up as my true self, which could be in itself deceiving by not speaking my truth. It could be by people pleasing, by trying to make sure that I am, caring. It's beyond caring. It's really making sure you're taking responsibility for somebody else's happiness, which is never my responsibility. It is not taking the time to check in. So I will often feel anxiety now when I move too quickly through my life, if that makes sense. So a lot of the times it's learning how to slow down and take the pause and become more like, is that my truth, or am I like a knee-jerk reaction to something? And so anxiety really shows up for me as a warning light that something's off. And I used to always think it was, oh, I'm stressed about money, because money was always a big anxiety. Growing up poor, never having enough, and always having this fear of survival, of just not being able to survive. And so for a long time, money was a real issue for me. And now I don't see money in the same way. I think of it more as a vibrational frequency. And we still have a love, I wouldn't say hate relationship, but I'd say a love and like unsure relationship, as we move through and learn about these aspects of our world. The other thing with awareness is it is a way of seeing that your people pleasing is actually a safety strategy. And so when we recognize this, I decided almost 2 weeks ago now, or maybe just over 2 weeks ago, that I was going to do a year of truth. And so it was really instigated by the book The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. And I decided that I was going to go full out. That it wouldn't mean that I would be hurtful to people by any stretch. It just meant that I would be truthful about who I am, my beliefs, how I'm showing up in this world. And it would include me not staying quiet ever when I should have said something. And it was interesting. I had a point earlier this week, actually on LinkedIn, which really surprised me, where a girl did a post and some people posted afterwards. I mean, it's supposed to be like professional. And this woman who is a professional badmouthed this lady, saying, like talking about the amount of Botox she had in her face and how obviously she wasn't very confident. And then another guy chimed in, and I was like, the hell is wrong with you people? And I was disgusted by their behavior, but I moved on. And then I realized, hold on a minute, you actually are going to need to say something and actually say, like, is this really what you feel is appropriate behavior? You're supposed to be adults. We don't want our children bullying, but here you are bullying somebody. When I went to go back, I actually couldn't find the post. And I don't even actually know who the lady was that I saw on my feed in the first place. And so it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, okay, so I need to make sure that I'm really pausing and like checking in with myself. Who do you want to be in this situation? How do you want to show up? And so seeing where we are people pleasing and understanding that it's often a safety strategy, that we're doing this because we don't want to be attacked. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to lose out in the world. And so when we understand that, excuse me, we don't need to be upset with ourselves. We just need to become aware. And that is the biggest key to all of this. None of this is a reason for us to judge ourselves and find ourselves as less. And that was something that took me a long time to get. I don't need to be mad at myself. I don't need to judge myself when I make those, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but when the awareness comes maybe a little late. And instead, what I need to do is take the time to go, oh, okay, so how can you handle that next time? And actually slow down enough to become aware of it. And so like that was one moment just this week where I was like, oh, okay, there's a place where I can tweak, and my new level of better will be just a little bit more than what I was yesterday. And that's really what we're looking for. The other thing about awareness is it's recognizing that self-sabotage is just an unhealed fear in motion. So if you think about that, because self-sabotage is an action. And so if we're self-sabotaging, it's always because we have an unhealed fear that we are trying to protect ourselves from experiencing again. And so again, we want to be aware of it without judgment. And so when we can start having a level of discernment, of the ability, and that's what awareness is it's the ability to kind of pull back and kind of look at ourselves for a moment and go like, oh, there's a wound here, and check in. And it doesn't mean that we're going to heal that wound in that present moment. It might not be appropriate. But we definitely want to make note of it, and we definitely want to come back to it. And then we're like, oh, I can feel that self-sabotaging that I'm doing. So how can I switch that? And maybe it's leaning in a little bit more. And for me, I'd probably say about 2 years after I read that book, Gifts of Imperfection, I would literally lean in when I was uncomfortable in a situation, where I would just start leaning forward instead of defensing and guarding. I would actually like soften and lean into the discomfort of things. And I had to physically do it so that like it was like my body would go first, and then my mind, and then my energy would start to flow in a different way. And so I started showing up differently at work, in my relationships, and that was the beginning, was just leaning into the discomfort. So when these awarenesses come up, it's not that we want to judge ourselves, it's that we just want to take those moments and note them and then do something about it, if that makes sense. So we want to remember that the big truth in this is we can't shift what we won't name. We can't shift what we won't name. And so if we think of it from that point of view, then it becomes really imperative that we name these things, even when it's uncomfortable. I had a moment with my coach earlier this week where we were discussing a fear of showing up in the world. And one of the things that came out was something I didn't want to name, which was admiration. And realizing that I had this piece where I would know if it was an extrinsic experience. So if I was admired in my work, then I know that I had made a difference in this world. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. I want it to be intrinsic. And so we started to work kind of backward, like where'd that come from? And part of it is probably because I admire a lot of my mentors. And so you want to be able to give back in the same way. They've made a really positive impact. And so without realizing, that was a word that came forward where I was like, oh, I don't actually want that. And the reason I didn't want it is because I didn't want my ego to get engaged, and I could see where it could cause me some trouble. And so I was like, okay, being aware of that, I want to tweak that to make sure that I am never doing something from ego center where it could do harm. So that was a really big piece for me to make sure that I checked that in. But in the beginning, I didn't even want to name it. I was really uncomfortable to even say the word admiration. So whatever shows up for us, it's important that we do name it, even if it's within the safety and the security of the relationship with ourselves. Maybe it's just journaling it out. Maybe it's the safety and security with your partner, your spouse. Maybe it's your best friend. Maybe it's your coach, your counselor, your therapist. Whatever it is, we just want to name it. And however that shows up doesn't really matter as long as we do the work. And we can't choose, and part of this is because we can't choose a new pattern when we're protecting the old one. So if we don't name it, it's like keeping it in a hiding spot that we're not really dealing with something. And so as long as we can keep hiding pieces of ourselves, then even from ourselves, then we can't create a new pattern. We can't create the change that we desire in our lives. And one of the pieces that comes with this is, I wrote down that your triggers are your clues. And so if we think of it this way, like we're never broken. Nobody's broken. I know it can seem that way, and we crack jokes. I even own a business called Broken Squirrel, but we're not broken. What we are is being guided. And so every trigger, every spiral, and every shutdown is, again, they're like little warning lights, like my experience with anxiety. And so there are ways to let us know that there's a wound here that we need to heal. And if we can think of it from that moment, so these moments that we can think of them as invitations. So when we feel ourselves getting triggered, we want to take the time to pause and to feel. And that can be hard. And so my recommendation always to people is go to the bathroom. Go to the washroom. At least it's one place where you can have privacy for a moment, and we can check in and take the pause. We can take a nice deep breath into our body, and then we can pause and feel in, and we want to notice what's actually running the show. What's actually running your life right now? Because a lot of times we don't even realize it's not us. And so we need to check in with ourselves and know what's there. So instead of judging ourselves, my question that I like to ask myself, and I'm going to put out to you guys, is who's showing up right now? So if we're feeling triggered, we're at work or we're with our kids or our spouse or wherever we are, and we're all of a sudden triggered, we go take that pause, go to our car, go to the bathroom, and we check in. So we pause, we feel into our bodies, and the question is, who's showing up right now? Me or the version of me that had to survive? For years, I identified my main identity was that of the survivor. And the only reason, and I wore that as a badge of honor, for sure. And the only reason that I started to work, and it took me years to release this identity, it was so deeply embedded. And the only reason why I released the identity was because I was watching a speaker on stage at an event, and he asked, who here in the audience is a victim? Is a victim of somebody or something or some environment or society, whatever. And quite a few people put their hands up, and I'm not going to lie to you, I sneered. And then he asked, who here is a survivor? And the majority of the audience put their hands up. And so then he said, okay, again, who here is a victim? People put their hands up. Who here is a survivor? Everybody puts their hands up. And he's like, I don't understand. What is a survivor but a fighting victim? And that statement rocked my whole life. It's never the same again. And at that moment, I was so shaken. I remember my heart started beating fast. I was like, felt really, really uncomfortable. And I was thinking, oh my God. The reason I'd sneered at the other people is I'd always swore I'd never be a victim. And here somebody just took my identity of survivor and turned it on its head. And at that moment, I realized I don't want to survive. I want to thrive. I want to actually live my life. And so that moment became this pivotal moment. It was probably about 9 years ago. I must have been probably about 40 years old. And all of a sudden I had this moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to change everything. And so this question, who is showing up right now, me or the version of me that had to survive, allows me to take a moment. And because I understand that she was trying to survive, I can just love on her. I don't have to judge her. I don't need to think less of her. I can simply be in full relationship with her. I can cultivate an intimate relationship with this version of myself that I used to be. And from there, I have a totally different understanding of who I am, who I was. And then I can start softening and healing those wounds so that I show up as a different version of myself next time. And what's really cool is when we get really comfortable with being uncomfortable, we can actually do it in live time. So all of a sudden I can shift now and go, oh, I'm super triggered. And if you're with me, you'll actually hear me say these words out loud, like, oh, I'm super triggered. What is that? And then I just like love on myself. I'm like, oh, what are you feeling right now? And I'm like, oh, I think I'm triggered because of this, this language or these words or whatever. And somebody might be like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, no, you don't need to change it. I need to like heal a wound. You don't need to protect the wound. I don't want the wound. It'll just fester and be there my whole life. It's not what I'm looking for. I want to be healthy. I want to be healed. And so from that place, I'm like, thanks for letting me know I have the trigger. Maybe don't keep poking at it in the moment. But now that I'm aware of that, now I'm going to go and work on it. And so I get to show up as a different version of myself. And that's the beauty of taking the moment and understanding awareness isn't passive. It's powerful. And it's in action in lifetime. And so you can work with these tools, these things in the absolute moment, or if we're not quite ready, then we can always take the pause and go back and then reevaluate for next time. And we keep it there. And by doing the awareness work and journaling on it, it allows us to come back to ourselves and have a different outcome each time, so that we just kind of keep getting better just by 1%. 1% healed, 1% healed. We're not trying for big, broad sweeps. We're looking to embody and be present in our life and in ourselves. And then the third piece of this is the breath and how it helps us connect with the body. And so this week I've been all about the breath. So if you've been following my emails, if you've been following my YouTubes, the breath is a piece that's kind of coming in right now as in April. And part of that is because I think of the breath in relationship to the seasons. And so as we enter into spring, I think of the inhale or the inspire, to receive inspiration, to plant seeds, is spring. And the pause at the top of the breath is like summer, where we're absorbing, we're heating, we're expanding. And then the exhale or the expire, we drop our leaves, we drop the things that aren't serving us, we let the breath go, we gift the breath back to nature. And then the pause at the bottom of the breath is like winter, space being made, time for gratitude for the cycle, and then we begin again. And so the breath is being a big focus of sharing it. To me, the breath is so powerful. And one of the beauties of it is that it's with us all the time. And most of the time, we're not really paying attention to how we're breathing. We don't really think about where we're breathing in our body, let alone its length of time, its expansiveness, and how we can become aware of it and change the experience of our physical form by being present with the breath. And so this became a major part of my healing as I learned how to control my pain using my breath. And that was the beginning of my meditation practice, the beginning of, I guess, the life I live now. So this became a major piece of it. So this is usually where most people stop. We become aware of something and we're like, oh, I'm aware of that. And we just stop. We don't actually do anything about it. And this is where I want us to make an actual positive change in our lives. And so instead of stopping at the insight, We want to actually create the embodiment. And it's the embodiment that helps stop us from just having another loop that just keeps cycling and moving through. And this is where we bring the breath in. So the breath is really what helps us break the loop. And so the body, the energy, and the nervous system all get to be connected and all get to find a level of regulation instead of the dysregulation that looping patterns cause in our life, mental, emotional, and physical. And so when we pair awareness with regulation, we become, well, unstoppable. We actually start connecting in to our true divine power. And our breath, remember I said the inhale is the inspire. So the cycle of respiration of breath, inhale, inspire, to be inspired. And so if you think of it as receiving divine power, divine energy into your body, and that's why we want to pause and take a moment. And in that pause, and we breathe in, and we get the pause at the top, and it's a moment of pure potential where any next thing is possible, any next breath, any next exhale. It could be short, it could be long, it could be medium, totally unique and totally different than anyone ever before it. And so as we breathe in and we take a full cycle of breath before reacting, we shift immediately to responding. And so the breath becomes the major player in helping us regulate our nervous system so that we can break a loop and have a new outcome. And we can shift from surviving to actually thriving within our bodies, within our life. So by doing this, we're no longer reacting, we're actually choosing. We're no longer collapsing, we're actually creating. And this is what we're looking for in our life, and the breath is what can help bring us that. So as you go through these pieces, my challenge to you guys this week is the breath. When you're in a situation, somebody says something or asks you a question, even if you're not triggered, can you get into the habit of taking a breath before you respond? And you can even ask the question back. So can we take a pause, take a breath, think for a moment, so you're actually like listening and being present in it, and then responding. And the interesting thing is, one of the reasons why I didn't do this for a long time is I thought I had to react fast so that I looked smarter. So remember, this is a safety and survival issue, so that I would be accepted, I would be seen, I would be heard. I was scared to take a pause before somebody else would jump in, so to try and take even my space up. So notice if you feel resistance to taking a breath, taking a pause, what's causing that? And it's an interesting time, because when we are doing things like, reels, and we're being encouraged to speed up the lag time so that there's no pause between us talking, so it goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and for the full 90 seconds, because if you take a pause or take a breath, they'll move on to another show. Like, it's ridiculous. And so we are literally being trained to not breathe. And I'm going to encourage you and challenge you this week to breathe, to take the pause. Take the pause before you make a choice. Take the pause before you react. Take the pause, take the breath before you respond. Can we take breaths and come back into ourselves and be present? So instead of making decisions and choices from the past version of ourselves, instead we're making choices and decisions from this current one. Here's my challenge for you guys this week. All right, I want to give you guys the heads up. I am going to be doing a VIP day. It's going to be on Saturday the 12th from 9 until 1. It's going to be a smaller group, mostly because I want there to be interaction within it. It's going to be 4 hours. I'm going to share the details with you guys in this group before it goes anywhere else. So before we email it or anything, I'll give you everything and the opportunity to join that. It's going to be 4 hours, and we are going to be doing breath work and somatic regulation. We're going to be talking about rewiring our subconscious patterns, energy clearing, as well as some personal coaching in there, some love seats. And then we're going to be doing some integration practices that you can take with you and actually use. And so it's not just another info session. This is going to be an opportunity for transformation in real time. So if you're interested in that, You can also always DM me, or you can comment below if you'd like the details on that. I can send it over to you. It was going to be $97 for the 4-hour session, and for you guys, I'm going to take it just to $47 because I just want to be able to really connect and share this information. So it'll be 4 hours next Saturday. So if you guys are interested in that, I'm really excited for that. So remember, awareness is not just a tool, it's a revolution. It's the moment you stop betraying yourself for the comfort of others. And it's the space where our healing starts for real. Remember, you are not too much. You're just waking up, and you're exactly on time. It was really hard for me to remember for a long time. I always think that I'm behind. I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 this summer, and I'm like, oh, I wish I'd woken up when I was 20 or been more aware of myself. And that's really what it means to awaken. It means to be in pure awareness, to always be aware. That's really what we're talking about here. And I always felt like I was late to the party, and we're not. We're exactly where we need to be right now, right here. This is the exact right time. So don't think that we're too far behind, we're too old, we're, haven't been fast enough, we're not at the leading edge. We're perfectly on time for ourselves. Go ahead and drop me some love in the comments if this hit for you. And I'd love to know, what is one pattern that you are ready to release? Maybe it's a pattern that showed up this week, like it did for me with that LinkedIn, where I didn't make the comment and I had regret afterwards. I wish I'd taken the time to do it in a loving way, but it was really firm and really clear that it was an unprofessional, and it was a disappointment to watch grown adults do this to another adult. Trolling on LinkedIn was really probably one of my most WTF moments this week, of just realizing we haven't gotten far enough. So here we get an opportunity to shift together in a way that's beautiful, that in a way that is supported, and in a way that cultivates community and connection. Until next time, you guys, brightest of blessings, sending you so much love. Bye for now.